Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining me. This is our national and global news recap or review where we discuss everything that happened from last Friday on when we met until today, throughout the weekend, and also today. And I want to begin with some breaking news because Putin, as I refer to him as Putler, he just signed into law a creation of a security zone along the Ukrainian border in the area of responsibility of Russia's North grouping. In effect, that signals plans to expand control over border areas in Kharkiv, Sumy, and Chernihiv regions. So essentially, when this special operation began, he recognized 3 areas as Russian, and now he added 3 more. So much to the fact that, allegedly, yes, Trump claims repeatedly that Putin really wants peace. It reminds me on that infamous song, right? A little piece of Poland, a little piece of France. That's type of peace that he wants. Let's say hi real quick, but I wanted to get that out of the way. Hi, Sean. Hello. Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Hi, Michael. Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So what we're going to discuss today, essentially everything that happened this weekend. And as you see here, it's a doozy. A lot of stuff happened actually today. So Ukraine has now special, as Trump refers to that, deals, but actually agreements that are actual agreements, legal agreements, as opposed to whatever Trump does, with Sweden, with the Netherlands. Also, Canada has joined the SAFE Act in Europe, and we're going to dive into what that means. President of Ukraine, Zelenskyy, met with President Macron in France, in Paris, as you see here. And of course, we will be discussing what happened in Miami yesterday when, as you see here on the lower right bottom, this was the meeting. Chaired by Special Envoy Witkoff, nobody in the government, Kushner, but son-in-law to Trump, and Rubio. So we're going to discuss that as well. But first and foremost, we have severe weather happening in United States, also across the United States, but also, of course, North America in general. So parts of United States are facing dangerous winter conditions on one of the busiest travel days of the year. Today, people are still returning home after the Thanksgiving holiday. Now, fresh storm system is sweeping out of the plains toward the northeast, threatening further disruption after post-Thanksgiving blast dumped record November snow on Chicago, shuttered highways across several states, and forced thousands of flight cancellations. Essentially, every third flight was canceled. Now, this new system is expected to bring another wave of snow and ice over many of the same areas today, extending into interior northeast by Tuesday. Now, heavy coastal rain will move through the Ohio Valley, and flash flooding risks remain high across the South. And in total, 30 states are currently under weather warnings, watches, or advisories. So please be careful and please listen to your local news. But I want to show you a video which is horrific. There was a 50-car pileup in Indiana after sudden whiteout. And here's the video, and then we're going to discuss what happened.
Watch your step-bys everywhere. We're moving victims to the median.
Copy. Truck still sliding. Get chocks on the wheels.
On it.
So a massive traffic pileup involving approximately 50 cars, vehicles, cars of any kind, occurred on an Indiana highway as visibility collapsed in a sudden burst of heavy snowfall. As you just saw, cars and trucks slammed into one another in rapid succession. The highway was closed for 6 hours while tow trucks cleared the wreckage. And fortunately, only minor injuries were reported, an outcome state officials called remarkably lucky given the scale of the clash. And then, I want to always start on some positive news. So if you're a football fan, football of any kind, the European football, which we refer to as here as soccer, or the American football, you have something to look out for this week. So tomorrow, not tomorrow, on Friday. See, it's Monday. In my head, it's already Thursday. On Friday, FIFA will hold the draw for 2026 World Cup. This is also where they're going to award Trump with some FIFA Peace Prize that they just made up. So he shows up and is entertained. So this will be hosted jointly, of course, the FIFA 2026 by Canada, Mexico, and the US, followed by match times and venue announcements on Saturday. So on Friday, they do the draw. Saturday, you're going to know the venues and times and all the announcements in case you're interested in purchasing tickets. Now, in American football, elite college teams enter conference championships this weekend, fighting for playoff survival. And in South Florida, Messi, if you do like soccer or football, as we call it in Europe, his Inter Miami team will host Vancouver in the MLS Cup final as the global superstar attempts to get another title to add it to his career. So if you're anywhere near Miami or want to travel, now you know. And now let's talk about that infamous meeting. So this is Miami. First, what I want to put out there that it was a turbulent weekend. You know that NABU, the so-called independent agency that is fighting corruption in Ukraine, allegedly at this point, because they're very much conflicting reports, they had an order to search the apartment of Volodymyr Zelensky's right hand, so to speak, the now former head of presidential office, Andriy Yermak. And so apparently this was given to Zelensky on November 21st. On November 28th, they did conduct the search. Again, allegedly, Yermak didn't know anything about it, but he, of course, collaborated and cooperated with authorities. They did not state that they found something or opened any type of procedure, but as a result, Yermak resigned, so to speak. And so the whole drama, with that, but let's put that aside because I don't like, playing some type of like celebrity press. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in delivering factual news that do matter for you so you can make better decisions. So as a result, the delegation that traveled to Florida was a bit different. Umerov, who is former Secretary of Defense equivalent of ours, but now he's head of National Security Council in Ukraine. He was heading this delegation. And with him were also now former UN or Ukrainian ambassador to UN, Kyiv. He is now vice president. He's vice premier, something like prime minister and vice prime minister, so to speak. He also joined. He's also rumored to replace Yermak going forward, but there's also other names being thrown in as well. But altogether, they were meant to go to Mar-a-Lago. Last minute, the American side said, no, we're going to be meeting in Miami. So they did come to Miami and they met in some type of location here, as you see. So the blonde lady on the right hand is also, she's the new ambassador of Ukraine to United States, Olga Stefanishina. Now, so they did meet and they met for 5 to 6 hours. Some people say 5, some people say 6. What do we know? So first they met, they delivered those vanilla statements where on the American side, it was Secretary of State Rubio, the only appointed and diplomat, so to speak. I call him Ariel because he changes his, sometimes he loses voice to be able to walk or be part of Trump regime. But altogether, he was the head of this delegation, but there was Witkoff. And throughout this weekend, we found out the dealings and the doings and the canoodlings of the Trump family and extended Trump family with Russia, with specifically Kremlin and the, so we call them the wallets of Putin, right? They're already monetizing Alaska. They already have plans to monetize Ukraine and all of that, right? And so what stands in the way is Ukraine, right? You have to agree. And as I broke the news, right, in the beginning, Putin did sign already, some type of illegal document claiming that 3 more regions supposed to be controlled by Russia's, North grouping. What the hell? What is North grouping, right? Nobody knows. But anyway. So that all stands in the way because Putin wants land and he wants America to recognize occupied territories, including Crimea, as Russian. And Trump is willing to do so. But of course, this is highly illegal. You can't even write it on paper. I mean, it's embarrassing, especially if you actually have to pass it through Congress. You will be violating UN Charter and Vienna Convention and Geneva Convention. I mean, like all of it, right? And we're not even talking about the Budapest Memorandum, where United States, Russia, and UK actually promised to protect Ukraine's sovereignty because Ukraine agreed to give up the nuclear capabilities. But that aside, right? So they did travel, and Rubio opened with, this big talk of, we are now talking about rebuilding Ukraine. We're now talking about, enrichment and blah, 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 blah. And Ukrainian media really fell for it. They're like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. I agree with Rubio. I mean, like, always verify what the hell they mean by that. Because when Russia says, this is they're like, look, I have this. And you're like, yeah, I have a pencil too. You think it is a pencil, but they might think it's a piece of cheese. Okay, so you always have to verify whatever they mean. And the same thing with Rubio. When they talk about rebuilding Ukraine, they actually mean, and we found it out through the 28-point surrender plan and other documents and leaks, and Axios is in cahoots with Kremlin, leaking shit constantly. So we found out that they actually want to monetize Ukraine, build something in occupied territories, but all of it is even more than that. They're focused on rebuilding the economy of Russia because Russia made up a number and they said, well, you know what, Donald Trump? You know what, the cronies? We have $2 trillion that you can have, right? You will be defrosting our frozen assets, the $300 billion, and on our behalf, you will be investing it into back into our economy, right? You can co-own or even own Nord Stream, right? So that's the Russian gas is off the hook when it comes to the sanctions, of course. And so you can build big business. So, who cares about Ukraine or whatever? Now focus on making money. You have $2 trillion on the table. Number is made up. What rebuilding? Minerals? When you talk, yeah, Russia has access to minerals, so they have the capability. But if they don't ask Chinese, and Chinese are not going to be helping here, to say the least, if they don't ask the Chinese to help with infrastructure, they can't begin getting those minerals out of Russia in 10 years. And this is very optimistic, right? When they talk about, U.S. has already signed something minerals-wise with Ukraine, but again, those are occupied territories, or there are no infrastructure to even get those minerals out. You will have to be investing. You will have to secure the territory, right? But we're all about some type of numbers, and Trump really likes those numbers, and he likes to talk about making money, and that is what drives all of this here. Really with the major disregard to anything legal, right? Not UN charter, not sovereignty, not territorial sovereignty, political, diplomatic. Nobody cares about that, right? We just want to announce big numbers, and Russia sounds fantastic in that regard. And so they're meeting in Miami, and first, we have those vanilla statements. Rubio says, well, we're talking about the rebuilding Ukraine. Umerov, on the other hand, says, well, we're so grateful and so thankful, and we're thanking President Trump, and we're thanking his super team, and blah, 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 blah. Nobody's actually asking, why is Kushner there? Kushner has the same legal authority as you and I, practically none. So whatever he says or signs really doesn't matter at all. Yes, he's the son-in-law of President Trump, but more than that, there is nothing. And so Umerov and Kislitsa also thanking ultimately Kushner for laying out his vision. And my question is, why are we laying out visions? We did not elect these individuals. He was not even appointed, as Witkoff was. Senate did not approve any. Who is this person? Why is he there? Why is he deciding on territorial integrity of Ukraine? When was the last time he's been to Ukraine? And we know he shows up like a shark when he smells blood. Well, Kushner shows up when it smells like money, right? So in that regard, it is kind of important to see where they were. Then they exit the meeting after 5 to 6 hours. They also deliver those vanilla statements as to Rubio says we have good progress. Ukraine says, yes, we do have good progress. We've, all of that. But nothing really changes. Okay. So then this morning, just a second, I will have to put, somebody is knocking on the door. Let me just, weirdest thing ever. Just a second. All right, I'm back. Thank you so much for waiting. Our building is on sale, so they do this type of showings, and I didn't know they will do it. But anyway, so vanilla statements afterwards, but we don't really know what happened. Then this morning, we do get, obviously, more leaks. And so then major developments actually did emerge. So CNN reported first that the White House is weighing a scenario in which NATO and Russia reach separate arrangements. again, when we speak about legality, this is very much illegal. First, why is it illegal? It is prohibited to tell Ukraine or any country to put into their constitution that they will not be joining some type of alliance that would be aiding to their defense. This is prohibited, right? So then you can't actually even change NATO position, right? To have an agreement with them, prohibiting them to accept any other, any other members either. So this is very much illegal, right? So what they want to do essentially is to put in the agreement that Ukraine will be able to join NATO, right? And Ukraine will sign it, so they don't violate Ukrainian constitution. But then they will have a separate agreement with NATO that NATO will not be accepting Ukraine, which again goes against the NATO situation, right? And the whole idea, NATO was created to protect Western, countries against former Soviet Union, right? And Russia itself. So, okay. Under this concept, Ukraine's aspiration to join NATO would remain in its constitution, but be practically blocked, potentially through agreements made without Kyiv's participation. Then, we find out that U.S.-Ukraine talks in Miami reportedly turned very tense because, contradicting whatever Rubio said, they were not progressing. Because U.S. came in and demanded Ukrainian troop withdrawal from Donbas. Donbas that Russia tries to occupy since 2014 and cannot succeed with that. So, in which Kyiv, or this delegation from Kyiv, refused, calling the demand impossible. Kyiv also stated it would not abandon its course toward NATO, noting that altering the constitution for a deal would set a bad precedent. And also, Ukrainians are not willing to concede any territory because we know what will happen to people in occupied areas. They will be tortured. They will be also used as this cannon fodder to fight Russia's war elsewhere. So then security guarantees were also unresolved. Despite having no finalized plan, the U.S. delegation is flying to Moscow next with this is again confirmed by Wall Street Journal and AFP, reporting that Witkoff is meeting with Putin already tomorrow. The meeting was essentially planned on the 5th or the 4th of December. Now he's already there, meeting one-on-one again with Putin, not using his own translators or any advisors. He's really there, just relying on those FSB translators provided by Putin. Trump confirmed preparations for this meeting, claiming there is, quote, a chance for an agreement, while suggesting that internal Ukrainian problems complicate talks. And here he's talking about corruption. Rubio later said that U.S. would provide security guarantees to Ukraine only after a peace agreement with Russia, effectively meaning no guarantees, right? Because if I will tell you, well, you know what, I'll get you the guarantees. Well, I compared it already on Friday. It's the same story as if you would need a parachute to jump out of a plane, and I will provide it after you dropped face down on the ground, right? I mean, who needs those guarantees after you already signed off on your safety? Then today, President Zelenskyy travels to Paris, and it was such a warm welcome by Macron's and so many kisses. Take a look. Okay, so all sweet and all wonderful. Now, President Zelenskyy there, of course, met with Macron. Then they also called the Coalition of the Willing, and they discussed whatever happened yesterday in Miami and what the deals would be. Yesterday, Zelenskyy also tweeted last night that he's looking to speak with Secretary General of NATO, Rutte, because there will be some things coming up with NATO, which of course, at least I thought, that's kind of weird. And then we find out what NATO is actually planning, which I will have for you next. So Zelenskyy confirmed that in Miami for 6 hours, they focused on those territories, adding that the meeting produced results. Macron stated that the coalition of the willing has finalized its work on security guarantees for Ukraine and will now discuss them with US. And here's a clip.
So the question of territory and land is probably the most difficult. To be honest, this is something that we have spoken about in the past. Without the presence of European partners, it is quite difficult to make any headway, especially for the reconstruction efforts and rebuilding efforts, because that money is going to come from predominantly European partners.
So, okay, Macron also detailed past failed attempts at mediation, which is really important to take notice of. Quote, they, the US, first called for ceasefire. March of this year, President Zelenskyy said, yes, I agree with the ceasefire. They went over. Russia said no. Then another proposal came through in June. We worked on it here in London. Russia said no. Then there was Anchorage and American proposal for mediation. Russia said no. America is coming forward with yet another proposal to mediate. We now need to wait for Russia's response. Are they willing to put an end to fighting or not? And I mean, I guess it's very easy to answer it for yourself, right? Now, Zelenskyy acknowledged heavy fighting in Pokrovsk and multiple directions. He emphasized that Kupiansk remains under Ukrainian control, despite Russian claims. Now, why does it matter? Because Putin, the night, the eve of meeting Witkoff, who's already in Russia, who is mesmerized by Putin, they did this whole type of sort of like a very cheap cinema reenactment, pretending that Putin went to Pokrovsk and went to front lines and was briefed on how Russia heroically, won over Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, which, again, there is fighting in Pokrovsk region, and Kupiansk remains under Ukrainian control. So Peskov, the spokesperson of Putin, announced Putin was briefed on the capture of Pokrovsk and Vovchansk ahead of Witkoff's arrival. Gerasimov, is their defense minister, told Putin that Russian forces began an operation to liberate Gulaipole. This is also another region. So they added 3 different locations that they have no control over. One is they're fighting over, another is under Ukrainian control, the third one they're making up. So this is how it looked like.
Товарищ Верховный Главнокомандующий Объединенного группировки ВОС решает задачу плана специальной военной операции. Начальник Генерального штаба Генерал Добрый день.
I mean, cheap movies look hella better. So Zelenskyy also in Paris visited Dassault Aviation, reviewing Rafale fighter jets production and discussing localization of aviation technologies in Ukraine. I'm pretty aware I butchered this French name. Apologies. Okay, excusez-moi. All right, so what do Ukrainian soldiers say? Because this is also important. Yes, you do have the commander-in-chief. In Ukraine, it's different, right? It's sort of the equivalent of our defense minister. You do have Shmihal, you do have Zelenskyy, you do have everybody. But you also do have soldiers who are now fighting for almost 4 years, and they also do make decisions on their level as well. So NBC News did a good report on Ukrainian forces in Donetsk region. The Donetsk region that Putin wants to be given to him and recognized by US as Russian territory. So, and the forces say they will not withdraw from Donbas even if ordered. Many see Trump's proposed plan as surrender, not peace. One soldier said, quote, "No one will make concessions on territory. This is our land and we stand here." End quote. Staff Sergeant Volodymyr Zhavsky called the proposal a real capitulation. Another officer emphasized that Ukraine would not give up control of its army size, calling it essential for national security. Importantly, Zelenskyy has no legal mandate to negotiate away any land not currently occupied by Russia and refuses to recognize any Russian seized land as legitimate. So, here falls the entire house of cards that Witkoff built with Kushner already, monetizing. It's like you bought a lottery ticket and you're like, oh, what am I going to do when I win it? And you already planned what you're going to buy, and you're going to invest, and you're going to do this, and you're already complaining about the tax. But meanwhile, you didn't win anything yet. So whatever they're pushing against, Ukraine cannot physically agree to. And even if you were to torture Zelenskyy and squeeze a yes out of him or some type of a signature, forces will not do it. Those are armed forces of Ukraine who saw their friends and loved ones die to protect the land. They will not withdraw. And Putin spent years since 2014 trying to acquire Donbas and still has not succeeded. If you want to have it, win it. Why don't you withdraw? That's the story here. So, EU defense ministers met today in Brussels. Kaja Kallas, the vice president of European Commission, she called for enough resources for Ukraine. She came in to this, step and repeat to deliver the opening statement for press. And she said, look, Putin is not hinting on any willingness to even discuss peace. So what we need to do is to ensure that Ukraine has enough resources to continue fighting, period, point blank. And by the way, this Kaja Kallas, because she's so straightforward, Rubio said he will no longer talk to her or negotiate with her or welcome her in Washington, D.C. Again, because she's not willing to play, so to speak, the game. Now, meanwhile, same Brussels, same defense ministers, but we have one new player joining the European pact, so to speak, and this is Canada, which then resulted into this big announcement that Canada joined the EU's 150 billion euros safe defense program, the first non-EU country to do so. So, it's a landmark agreement between Canada and the EU that will allow Canada to join Security Action for Europe SAFE, so to speak, program, the first time a non-European country participates. SAFE offers 150 billion euros in loans to strengthen EU defense capabilities. And now Canada, I know it's a stretch geographically, but feel me, Canada can stick to this defense plan. Why does it matter? When we did a deep dive on the Arctic, do I have a cover for it? I don't. I should have. Anyway, on Fridays, we meet for Onest Plus. It's our thing. It's a join button underneath. You can join. We do deep dives on Fridays for our members, right? Because we dive deep in some subjects I don't want to discuss publicly. All right. So there we did a deep dive on the Arctic. It's still available. If you're part of Onest Plus or want to join, you can watch it. It's about 2 hours. Now, we dive deep into what the Chinese want, what the Russians want, what the Americans want, what Canada needs, what options does Canada have in terms of securing the Arctic? Because China proclaimed itself years ago at this point as a near Arctic state, which geographically, again, is a stretch, but they want the trade routes. And so, yes, Canada, through Prime Minister Carney, who is very pragmatic in this sense, he is trying to monetize this route and make it of an interest and of a value to Chinese. So they will start protecting it against what? Against Russians. Russians who are now collaborating, apparently, with the U.S. in Alaska or about to, right? Okay. But then what does happen? And this is the question that I keep bothering NATO with for years at this point. What will happen if a NATO member invades another NATO member? Meaning Donald Trump follows up, right? Doesn't tackle out of it for some reason and starts invading Greenland for one way or another. Who will then protect Canada? Because yes, they are relying on themselves. There's NORAD, but do you really rely on U.S. protection against U.S.? That's a stretch of imagination. But what if something happens in Greenland? Will Canada start protecting Greenland? What's going to happen here? So this is important, right? Because if you look at the map, right, in the Arctic, on one hand side from Canada is Russia. On the other, Europe, right? And you will have to rely on Greenland, which is essentially Denmark. How do you collaborate with them? What happens with the icebreakers? How can you secure the area? And so this SAFE Act is very important. This is another option right next to NORAD, which is, again, run by US and is not that safe given this political environment. So Prime Minister Carney said Canada aims to leverage safe participation to boost defense manufacturing, attract investment, and support NATO readiness. Of course, it is important. Now, it is another story whether NATO is existing. Is it on paper or is it in reality? I keep telling you that the Article 5, in order to be invoked, it has to be not vetoed 3 times because they have to agree that the attack happened, that it was premeditated, that the response is needed, and agree on the response. And US will have 3 ways to veto it. So is NATO really there or no? What Canada can rely on and who Canada can rely on is Europe, because they share exactly same problem. All right. So, but China does play a big role, because in this regard here, because see, Putin is important for China. China is using Putin as the disturbance, right, in Europe. He is invading European countries. He is forcing them to direct their investment, and he's causing, so to speak, turbulence in Europe. US is paying attention to Europe, not paying much attention to Taiwan. This was under Biden regime, right? And the Biden regime administration did enact this bleeding bear operation, right? So we're going to aid Ukraine slowly to make sure Russia bleeds, right? And the bleeding Russia here, as a result, is very favorable for China. China wants to have the former Outer Manchuria. They want to have Vladivostok. They want to have the minerals. They want to have, they do have asks for Russia. Yes, they send some mercenaries there for payment. They also buy gas, and they also literally provide aid in many different forms to Russia because it benefits them. Now, Putin becomes a little bit too powerful because he is teaming up with Trump. And so China will have to do something, because now they're losing control over Putin, and it's not being really in their interest. As a result, you see that now President Macron is traveling to China from December 3rd to 5th. Macron will travel to China for 3 days to discuss EU-China economic ties, Ukraine specifically, and global security. The timing ahead of Trump-Xi meeting, right, which will happen in April sometime, underscores Europe's efforts to pursue a more autonomous geopolitical strategy. European officials hope China may pressure Russia toward a settlement that respects Ukraine's rights. Many experts argue peace is impossible without Beijing's involvement. And I would say without Beijing's disinvolvement, because Beijing is very much involved in aiding Russia's aggression. So, in this regard, Europe will try to choose another big buddy. If US, the big buddy, is now teaming up with the murderer, Europe will try now to leverage China. And at this point, it's in China's interest. Right? There are also rumors that, the fact is that Trump talked to Xi Jinping last week. The rumors are that he did agree to sort of give up protection of Taiwan in order to keep those big deals, right? Reportedly, Xi Jinping told him that if you want to keep deals and trade, and, they dropped the tariffs for another year with China, then you will have to somehow, close an eye or both on Taiwan. Allegedly, Trump agreed. Again, we have no readouts. We never have any memorandums. We don't know. Okay, let's quickly check here. Tidy Whitey. Hi, Timmy. Hello. Hi, Irene. Hello. Michael is here. The Budapest Memorandum was an agreement, right? Very legal agreement, too. Christy Freeland is a Ukraine kicking ass. Yeah. Well, Christy Freeland is an envoy to Ukraine. Okay, so meanwhile, we know this whole story between Japan and China, right? Japan said specifically new Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, said that invasion of Taiwan would represent national security threat to Japan. As a result, China went berserk. Now, Japan approved an additional $5.4 billion for ships, anti-ship systems, and Type 03 air defense batteries, including deployments to Yonaguni Island, just 110 kilometers from Taiwan. The boost reflects Tokyo's concern over Chinese military activity near Japanese territory and its determination to strengthen deterrence across Indo-Pacific. Reportedly, Trump did speak to Prime Minister Takaichi last week, where he asked her to, calm things down with China and not to provoke them. But, well, she's doing what she thinks is right. Now, this big shift, remember I told you that Zelenskyy tweeted yesterday that something might happen with NATO, and we'll have to kind of talk about NATO, right? I know it's a lot of parts today, but follow me. I do have a point. NATO's military committee chair, Admiral Giuseppe Cavodragone, told Financial Times the alliance is evaluating more aggressive approaches to Russian hybrid operations. Finally, cyber attacks, sabotage, and airspace violations. The preemptive strike, he said, could under some circumstances be considered defensive. Eastern European allies are urging NATO to impose real costs on Russia rather than remain reactive. Again, the problem with NATO here that US will be vetoing every single thing they plan here. So for that reason, the idea that the new Prime Minister of Netherlands, the newly elected Prime Minister, who's currently building his government, and once he does, and then he'll be sworn in and lead, he suggested to have some type of a European version of NATO, right? Some defense alliance. And yes, Europe is following through at scale, because today 15 members of European Union already pledged to be part of this Defense Act. And this is that SAFE Act that Canada is joining. So essentially, out of NATO, you now are crystallizing those partners and allies who are still allies with each other, who also want to talk to China to outweigh the new coalition between Russia and United States. Okay, so meanwhile, Kremlin pushes a narrative of imminent Ukrainian collapse. The Institute of Study of War says it's false. The Kremlin continues to insist Ukraine faces imminent military and political collapse. ISW assessed these statements as coordinated psychological operations designed to pressure the West into concessions. Ukraine and the US have been actively negotiating terms of the U.S. peace proposal, while Russia has not agreed to any terms. So whenever you hear that Ukraine front line is collapsing, blah, 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 please take it with a grain of salt or just disregard. Now, we know that Ukraine has been very successful eliminating those shadow fleet objects, especially when it comes to Black Sea. They knocked out 2, then throughout this weekend knocked another 2. But as a result, Black Sea, if you do get a map, is also shared with Turkey. And Turkish President Erdogan said recent attacks on commercial vessels clearly threaten navigational safety. Ukraine's SBU, which is the intelligence unit, and Navy confirmed they struck 2 Russian Shadow Fleet tankers, Cairo and Virat, used for sanction-evading oil transport. Now, video shows critical damage, and I do have a video for you. It has a Ukrainian song over it, but take a look. Where do I have it?
Впадуть у море звідусіль, завиють нам вітри, не стануть у нагоді їм фортеці й бункери. До кого бігтимеш щосил, кого попросиш, не мовчи, малий, зі мною говори. Розкажи.
So, as a result, Kazakhstan and Turkey have called for restraint, urging protection of regional energy stability. With all due respect, and I do respect the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, say whatever, is a strong leader. Maybe Putin should be ceasing his Shadow Fleet operations in the Black Sea, because this operation is illegal. This operation is aiding a murderer. If he would cease his operations, there would be no threat, there would be no war, and Ukraine, I mean, we all can agree, will not be shooting at any ships. So maybe we should be addressing the aggressor and, again, not the victim. Because when you hear this report, Ukraine is bombing Moscow, setting, Shahed drones into buildings, into this, into that. No, Ukraine is actually targeting military objects. What it does is preventing strikes on Ukraine's civilians. When Ukraine is knocking out a facility that stored those Shahed drones, or the facility that manufactured them, or there is a launching system there, or whatever, what they're doing is preventing the murderers from using their assets to hit Ukrainians and kill Ukrainians. Today in Dnipro, I mean, they killed children, and there's so many photos of just dead children lying around, and I'm not going to show it to you, but it happens really on a daily basis. But then when news are reporting that Ukraine is shooting and Russia retaliating and bombing Kyiv, no, you got it really upside down. You have to be all kind of cookie crazy to say something like that. Now, there's also a new report that Russia may be preparing environmental sabotage in Kherson. It's a Ukrainian map, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to show it to you so you kind of have an idea. So, journalists report receiving an intercepted combat order indicating Russia may target wastewater treatment plants in Kherson, potentially causing a major ecological disaster affecting the Dnipro River and Black Sea. Why does it matter? Because that will also impact Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey that are NATO members. Again, US will say, well, this was not premeditated, whatever, veto, no response is needed. But, and this is specifically directed to Turkey, this is a threat. And Erdogan was the first to shoot down Russian plane. First he warned, and then it took 16 seconds to shoot the hell out of it. Russia never complained. Russia never bombed them. Russia never even raised that question. And it was a literal jet. It wasn't a drone. There was a person in it. So, what is it now? Now, also, EU Justice Commissioner Michael McGraw told Politico that any peace settlement must avoid giving Russia a clean state for war crimes. Quote, I don't think history will judge kindly any effort to wipe the slate clean for Russian crimes in Ukraine. And here, what they're doing, they're warning President Trump, who is ready to wipe everything clean, right? When they mention in the 28 surrender plan, a 28-point surrender plan, that there will be amnesty and like everybody will be forgiven. Well, let's not forget that actually Putin has been charged for crimes against humanity, for stealing children, for killing civilians by ICC, and he actually is supposed to be detained and going to jail. So he warned that amnesty would simply plant the seeds of the next aggression. The remarks follow concern that the Trump's team draft 28-point plan included a full amnesty clause and reintegration of Russia into world economy. Now, to play devil's advocate, this was drafted in Kremlin. So yes, it was labeled as Trump's plan. Trump didn't even read it. So meanwhile, Trump gives Maduro an ultimatum. He had a call with the Venezuela's legitimate president, Maduro. He told him to resign or leave, rejecting Maduro's demands for amnesty and control of Venezuela's military. Maduro essentially offered Trump to do elections again and be fair. Trump said, no, pack your clothes and go, or else. Then he tweeted that the skies above Venezuela has to be closed for anything commercial. Stop, we're going to do whatever. Then a video emerged showing Chinese military officials seated among Venezuela military officials on their military base. After that, Trump was flying on Air Force One, where he claimed that don't read too much into my tweets. it doesn't mean that we're going to do something. Don't read too much into my tweets. Okay. Now, as to moments, sometimes I bring up some moments. European leaders delivered a coordinated and forceful message of unity, sovereignty, and resolve as negotiations over Ukraine's future intensify. And I think it is important to point it out because the news, specifically in North America or outside Europe, is not really showing the European response. Whoever we hear from is Ursula von der Leyen, the president of European Commission, or when they do this pilgrimage to Washington, D.C., we see them bending the knee, but we don't really hear from them. So here's German Chancellor Friedrich Merz emphasized that Europe has a firm and uncompromising stance toward any settlement that weakens Ukraine or divides the West. Quote, Europe has a clear course, no dictated peace imposed on Ukraine, no weakening or division of the EU and NATO. End quote. Merz noted that he and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk had spoken today. They met directly with President Zelenskyy, underscoring that European leaders remain in close and constant contact during what he called crucial days. Now, Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof, and I do have here a photo of him, he echoed this sentiment, saying that Russia must face increased pressure and that Ukraine must continue receiving military support. After a joint call with Zelenskyy, he stressed Europe's role in the peace process. Quote, we must increase the pressure on Russia further and continue to support Ukraine in every possible way. It is important that Europe plays an active role in this. No decisions about Ukraine without Ukrainians, and no decisions about Europe without the Europeans, which is exactly what is happening right now. Then he added that the Netherlands is contributing 250 million euros for urgently needed weapons, including air defense and F-16 ammunition, and announced a new agreement for joint Dutch-Ukrainian drone production. And this was also confirmed here, as you see here, Schmihal and the defense minister of Netherlands, they did sign the document, an agreement for joint production of drones. Essentially, they will be using Ukraine's tech and know-how and produce it in Netherlands because this is safer and cannot be targeted by Russia. Now, Polish President Karol Nawrocki, who is right-wing, pro-Trump, pro-Putin, he offered some historical warning, saying, quote, there were no agreements with the Moscovites, calling Russians Moscovites, in the 19th, 20th, or 21st century, only lies, a desire to take lives and to destroy. He said, this is a truth everyone must learn. He says one thing, he does another, right? He's buddies with Orban, he's buddies with Fico of Slovakia, he's buddies with Putin. So let's see what he will do. Now, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen reaffirmed that any peace agreement must be just, lawful, and aligned with Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, what do they mean when they say just peace? It means it just from the word justice. It has to be in line with the UN Charter, meaning territorial integrity has to be kept by the country that owns the territory, right? De facto. So, legally, not de facto. Quote, she said, remain united behind a peace agreement that does justice to Ukraine, one that fully upholds Ukraine's sovereignty and ensures the necessary security guarantees, end quote. She added that the EU is preparing legal proposals to meet Ukraine's financial needs and is working closely with members of the coalition of the willing. The problem here is Belgium, and I did report on that on Friday, that Belgium doesn't really want to use frozen Russian assets, asking that what if Russia will ask back for them and legally would have the right to do so. We want essentially European Union to fund those frozen assets, right? Which essentially then means that Europe will just give the equivalent of Russian assets to Ukraine, which is totally not the point because that would fall on European taxpayers. And what you want to do is use the money of Russian oligarchs, right? And it's not even the money of Russian oligarchs, it's the profit off of their investments, right? So Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda reported a surge in hybrid attacks originating from Belarus, where Putin does stage his troops and does training, and also has Russian nuclear capabilities staged in Belarus. So, including a dangerous balloon incursions that threatened civil aviation. After speaking with von der Leyen, he said, quote, "I thank the Commission for support and stressed the urgency of a stronger, more coordinated EU response to ongoing Russia-Belarus provocations. We must respond with unity and resolve." Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense minister, Denis Shmyhal, met here, as you see, with Sweden's defense minister, Paul Johnson, reaffirming Sweden's critical role in upcoming support packages. Shmyhal said they discussed the weapons included in Sweden's next aid package, as well as the ongoing dialogue on Gripen aircraft, calling it a priority area. Now, when I looked at the legal documents of this agreement that Zelenskyy did agree upon with Swedish leader, it said the Gripen will be delivered within the next 10 years. So this was the only deadline there. So there's nothing too specific, right? So it's very optimistic, but too specific. Now, Dutch Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans announced a major cooperative milestone. That's the one they signed. A new milestone: Ukraine and Netherlands are going to produce drones together in both our countries. This strengthens our joint security, resilience, and innovation. Meanwhile, something did happen to UK. Because UK Prime Minister Starmer made one of his most candid acknowledgements yet regarding Brexit economic damage. Listen in.
We do need to get closer to the EU. It is clear from all of the analysis that the deal that we've got has hurt our economy. That's why we've rebuilt relations and reset relations with the EU, and I'm proud that we've done that. That is why we're moving forward. We had the mandates agreed for the SPS agreement, and that will drive down costs in supermarkets significantly, particularly food costs, and the emission trading scheme just in the last week or two. So we're making progress on that front.
Why did you leave then, right? Okay, on American front, President Trump bothers with denaturalizing naturalized U.S. citizens, and he is trying to figure out who was naturalized not under him, so he can target them.
Mr. President, you said that you might denaturalize some American citizens. Can you talk about
You mean people that are in here that shouldn't be here?
that became Americans? Are you
Well,
trying
we'll
to
see. I mean, yeah, we have criminals that came into our country and they were naturalized maybe through a fight with somebody that didn't know what they were doing. If I have the power to do it, I'm not sure that I do, but if I do, I would denaturalize them.
Quick national news. United States marked the first day of meteorological winter today. Happy winter. Other news. National Guardsman critically wounded last week near White House is showing encouraging signs of neurological recovery. West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey said the soldier gave medical personnel a thumbs up when asked if he could hear them, and also wiggled his toes, signaling doctors describing as cautiously positive. So the U.S. State Department has approved $455 million sale to Bahrain for sustainment and support equipment for its F-16 fleet. The Pentagon said the package includes maintenance, spare parts, and associated services to ensure long-term operability of the aircraft. And one of you just mentioned, Michael, yes, you said whatever the EU does, they should not allow the U.S. in safe alignment. They won't, because safe alignment means you have to put money into it. It's essentially a big account shared by everybody where they pitch in to buy defense capability from US or from each other. So US will not join it. I mean, they're going to give anything. They're making money off of it, right? So President Trump said he has already decided who will replace Jerome Powell as Federal Reserve Chair, but declined to reveal the person's identity. Rumored that this is the Hassett guy who's in charge of our economy, who lies that our pricing is lower now. U.S. consumer spending set a new record on Black Friday, with Americans spending $11.8 billion online. even as in-store sales declined. Analysts say the surge underscores the long-term shift toward digital holiday shopping. And happy Amazon. Now, Warner Brothers Discovery is pressing ahead with its strategic review and has reportedly asked all potential bidders to submit second-round acquisitions offers by the end of today. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that Trump is hella healthy, and she released some type of a document. I don't want to waste your time reading it. It says that Trump has no cardiovascular or any type of issues, no inflammation. He's the healthiest person ever. I'm not a doctor, but okay. Now, Boeing was awarded $2.47 billion Air Force contract for 15 additional KC-46 Pegasus refueling tankers, bringing total orders across all customers to 183 aircraft. The Lot 12 order is expected to be completed by 2029. The White House confirmed that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorized an admiral to conduct multiple September strikes on a Venezuelan vessel allegedly carrying illegal narcotics. The operation resulted in death of 11 people on board. He tweeted that we will kill everybody. Then they shot the ships or the boats, and they didn't kill everybody. So some people were holding on to the wreckage of those ships, and then they hit them again and then literally killed everybody. And Hegseth is now apparently conscious that this could be seen as a crime. We're not at war, so it's not a war crime, but it's a murder. And now they're saying that this was some type of admiral, somebody whom he directed, or he, essentially Hegseth is off the hook, and Leavitt is playing this type of story here. President Trump will host the leaders of Rwanda and Democratic Republic of Congo on Thursday to sign a peace agreement that builds on U.S. brokered accord reached earlier this year. Most importantly, he's caring about their minerals. And that's what they will have to sign off this Thursday at the White House. Now, United States also took the leadership of G20. This is for a year. Last year was, of course, chaired by South Africa. U.S., neglected and ignored the G20 meeting last week, and now they still have this ongoing dispute with South Africa. They don't want to invite South Africa, and the G20 will be chaired by Trump in Miami next year. Whoop. Okay, the Trump is meeting he met at 5 p.m. today with his senior advisors, which is Rubio, Hegseth, and some others, to talk about Venezuela and other foreign policy issues. Also, U.S. and United Kingdom announced a new agreement eliminating tariffs on British pharma products and medical technologies. And in return, now this, I don't know what this means, UK committed to increasing spending on medicines and reforming how it assesses drug value. So do you want to come up with research that ivermectin is healing everything and anything, or what's the deal here? And finally, federal appeals court ruled that Alina Habba, once personal attorney of President Trump, was unlawfully appointed as the top federal prosecutor in New Jersey. The court disqualified her from supervising any cases, delivering a sharp rebuke for the appointment. Again, it all goes to Supreme Court. How are they going to vote? Is it 6-3? What do we expect there? We'll see. Now, some quick global news. I know I'm overstaying my welcome, but OPEC Plus members met and agreed to maintain current oil production levels for 2026, signaling stability in output amid fluctuating global demand forecast. Also, a new report shows that global arms manufacturers saw 5.9% arms rise in weapons revenue last year. You don't say U.S. doesn't make money off of all those wars either. Now, of course, it's driven largely by wars in Ukraine and Gaza and by rising military budgets across Europe, Asia, and Middle East. NATO continued advancing counter-drone defense with Project Flytrap 4.5, a 2-week U.S.-led testing event in Germany where allied soldiers, procurement specialists, and industry teams evaluated off-the-shelf technologies designed to detect and destroy drones more efficiently and at lower cost. Now, Russia has intensified its crackdown on VPN use on their own citizens. So, providers are cutting internet connections entirely when VPN traffic is detected. And it doesn't matter, you're going to delete your cookies or whatever. It's just going to take a second. They're going to take it off. causing devices to lose DNS settings and rendering the internet temporarily unusable. The outages reflect a growing attempt to extend censorship into private digital spaces. And I saw an interview with somebody who was giving an interview. It's a Russian woman. Was giving an interview. She's quite known and quite disgusting. But she was interviewed in Paris, and she was so afraid to pronounce the word Instagram. She's like, this forbidden gram platform, and she's paralyzed, so afraid to even mention the word Instagram, like it's Voldemort. But also what Russia is doing is in airports across Russia, arriving men are now being confronted by military enlistment personnel who register them immediately upon landing, a new tactic reinforcing the Kremlin's ongoing mobilization pressure. But ask Trump, he says that Putin is very much interested in peace, huh? This is how they get them at the airport.
Как ему сразу напоминают, улететь обратно просто так не получится. Он может приехать из любой страны, но по документам он гражданин России, а значит обязан встать на воинский учет, даже если завтра.
So, meanwhile in the Philippines, a single Coast Guard vessel took on 3 Chinese vessels who were in waters that do not belong to them, nor are they supposed to be there. The BRP Cobra successfully blocked 3 larger China Coast Guard ships from approaching the coast of Zambales. The incident involving ships, including the heavily armed CCG 4305, represents a clear violation of UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the 2016 ruling that invalidated China's sweeping maritime claims. And we do have a video.
The China Coast Guard vessel 21562. This is Philippine Coast Guard vessel, PRP Cabra MRRV 4409. You are advised that you are currently sailing within the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone, approximately 88 nautical miles from Palawi Point, Zambales, Philippines. In accordance with Republic Act 12064, the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, of which you are a party, and the 2016 Arbitral Award, you do not possess any legal authority to patrol within the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone. You are directed to cease and desist from conducting illegal maritime patrol.
So, now, deadly storms across Southeast Asia have caused more than 1,100 deaths in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka alone recorded 366 deaths, its worst cyclone-related disaster in 2 decades. Indonesia reported 604 deaths following massive flooding. On a better note, Pope Leo XIV was in Turkey for 4 days, was very well received, large crowds. Erdogan was, of course, checking on everything personally, and then he held a prayer in allocated stadium. It was incredible, right? So also prayed together with Muslim leaders and all that. Then he traveled to Lebanon. And in Beirut, when he landed, everything had his portraits, all the, high-speed, anyway, all the roads and all the whatever, every building had his face on it. Okay, so there he delivered quite a message that does not really go with the U.S. current politics. So he spoke on the 2-state solution as being the only solution for Gaza, right? Meaning Palestine and Israel. Take a look.
The Holy See has, for many years, publicly endorsed the proposal of a solution of 2 states. We all know that, in this moment, Israel does not accept that solution. But we see it as the only solution that could offer a solution to a conflict that is still live.
So also the Lebanese forces released aerial footage and radio recordings how they did welcome Pope Leo into their airspace. It's pretty cute. Take a look.
4000, this is Lebanon Escort 1. A29 Super Tucano, Squadron Commander speaking. Welcome to the Lebanese airspace. We are honored to accompany you until your safe touchdown. in the land of the holy cedars. We would like to relay the warm welcomes from millions of Lebanese awaiting your visit of peace. Formation will be established on your left echelon, left side, left wing.
Also, when he was in Turkey, Pope Leo delivered the message that there's so many leaders that are using and creating movements that ending up invading other countries and murdering people using Christianity or any religious notion as a pretense. And he said we have to heal these people, very much hinting on MAGA movement. I was very straightforward and he said it will take decades to heal these people from this type of understanding. So yeah, our really best export. Now, meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formally requested presidential pardon from President Isaac Herzog in his ongoing corruption case. He said essentially all of this is fake. This is dividing our nation. So give me the pardon so we can unite the nation. What? Unite the nation and misunderstand? If you're not guilty, why are you asking for pardon? This is my question here. Now, meanwhile, in South Africa, lawmaker Duduzile Zuma Sambudla resigned after being accused of helping lure 17 South Africans into fighting for Russia in Ukraine. She claims she believed she was recruiting them for legitimate training program and is now cooperating with police and repatriation efforts. Speaking of repatriation efforts, Olena Zelenskyi, while in Paris today, of course, the First Lady of Ukraine, she informed everyone that Russia completely ceased sharing any information on stolen Ukrainian children, which is clearly violating the Vienna Convention. And there's no progress on that regard. And you know that Zelensky's initiative, Bring Kids Back, UA, this is the most ongoing operation. And we heard that Melania Trump was saying that she rescued children. We never saw them, never got their names. But what we do know that the Bring Kids Back UA program does bring kids, several kids per week, and it's very much documented online as well. And I checked it throughout this weekend. And so now them not cooperating is incredible. Honduras presidential election remains extremely close, with two conservative candidates nearly tied after half the votes were counted. Trump endorsed National Party candidate Nasser Yasfura and announced he would pardon former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, currently serving 45-year U.S. sentence for drug trafficking. When asked, he said he doesn't know who he is. Then he pivoted and said Biden targeted him for nothing. But this guy smuggled over 400 tons of cocaine into U.S. Meanwhile, in Kyrgyzstan, parties aligned with President Sadur Shaparov dominated sharp parliamentary elections, further consolidating power and deepening concerns about declining media freedom and democratic institutions in what was once Central Asia's most politically open nation. And you saw actually Putin, getting this red carpet treatment and dances and birds and whatever in Kyrgyzstan recently. So, quickly on humanity, because we always want to end with something cute. So, some good stories. One is about cats or a cat, and other is about dogs. So, Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Carney has a cat. The cat's name is Nico. And so the cat has an Instagram or an X account on Twitter. And so the cat messaged with him where he provided more information about the cat itself. And so he described Nico, right? And it was named because they adopted him on December 23rd. And so, paying the tribute to Saint Nick, they called him Nico, and said it's very sweet and loving, extremely energetic, clumsy. One of his most distinctive traits is that the way he uses his paws a bit more like hands and than any cat I have ever met. And so very cute messages here, talking about Nico really liking to play with bugs and whatnot. And this is Nico. So cute. All right, and meanwhile, some really good news from Netherlands, by the way. Netherlands achieved a world first milestone, eliminating all stray dogs nationwide without euthanasia. Like, this is something that Netherlands spent decades achieving, and congratulations, this is incredible. Through strict welfare laws, mandatory registration, heavy fines for abandonment, universal sterilization programs, and a national push for adoption, every dog in the country has been placed in a safe, loving home, setting a global standard for humane animal policy. So on this beautiful note, be like Netherlands, adopt, don't shop. And yes, this is the news. I know it was a lot. I know it's a doozy. I know we have breaking news of Maduro dancing at some type of a rally. He's dancing salsa. Certainly he's protected by Chinese interests in Venezuela, so he's dancing salsa and not freaking out too much about Trump, who is already pivoting from whatever his plans are. But he, anyway, that's it. Thank you for giving us factual news. Helps me grounded. Thank you, Tidy Whitey. Thank you so much. Whatever the EU does. Okay, we talked about it. Again, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a lot. I know it's like, okay, tomorrow I will be live early around 5 p.m. because I'm invited to a premiere of some movie with red carpet or whatever at 7:30. So I'll be live at 5 to 6 or so you can make it there. All right. It was perfect. Needed facts wasn't a lot. Okay, good. Thank you. It felt a lot putting it all together and kind of like dissecting. Okay, so I'm working on a new website where in one place you're going to have your newsletters, these videos, with everything all in one spot, because I know some people are leaving social media. There also we're going to have those breaking news, which is called actual news. So all my posts from Blue Sky will remain there, of course, but also will be published there. So you can have one-stop shop, so to speak. Again, we have no paywall, so you will be able to get your information. If you decide to support us, I'll be truly appreciative. Join Onest Plus. It's a little button. Also, YouTube gives you offers and whatever, so you can join us on Fridays for deep dives and last Friday of the month for Off the Record Google Play meeting where we see each other and just chat. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow. Keep your head on a swivel. Your newsletter is coming very, very shortly. Thank you so much and have a peaceful night.